creepy TikToks that will blow your mind. Are you ready? Are you ready? Let's go!
Disclaimer: this video is for entertainment purposes only. Please do your own research, as these clips haven't been fact-checked.
I think I finally cracked the code on who all these people really are. Let's head back to the kitchen, rewind the film. We're with Alice and Helena, and there's an I can't believe it's not butter on the table. Kubrick, as we all know, doesn't place images randomly in his films. Everything, in every frame that Kubrick has ever filmed, has always meant something, especially in Eyes Wide Shut. We have Snackwells in this shot, and I know I've covered devil's food, but there's more to it. Here's Bill, beer. I think it's Budweiser. Here's Alice opening up her medicine cabinet in the bathroom. Looks like Tylenol's in there, and even Band-Aids. Look at the toy store. There's brands everywhere. It's the magic circle. Eyes Wide Shut, the film, keeps surrounding Bill with product placement, with advertisements and labels, alcohol brands, cigarettes, fashion labels, with processed food. The world of Eyes Wide Shut feels saturated by this corporate presence. And I think what Kubrick is quietly suggesting, that the people behind power are not distant from ordinary life. They're woven directly into it. At the kitchen table, in the medicine cabinet, fucking alcohol, in entertainment, in grocery stores. Do you want me to continue? Kubrick keeps reminding the audience, hidden influence doesn't only exist in masked mansions. It exists everywhere in everyday consumption. Bill spends the film wandering through spaces that are controlled by the wealthy, by the elite, while surrounded constantly by products owned by massive corporations that were deeply connected to global influence in the 90s. And Kubrick is framing all of it next to desire and intimacy. Nothing in Eyes Wide Shut is separate. The mansion and the fucking supermarket all belong to the same world. Eyes Wide is suggesting that power operates so deeply inside society that people interact with every single day without even thinking about it. The elite don't merely sit above the public. They're inside everyday routines. What products did you notice in Eyes Wide Shut? Drop a comment. And don't forget to follow, like, share, and favorite for more deep dives into I really hope you're not eating this shit.
Eyes Wide Shut is just the remake of They Live without the aliens.
I want to give a massive shout out to Truthseeker01011 on IG for bringing a vital piece of history called the Ash experiments back into the light. Because the system of control relies on one fundamental trick, making us believe we're completely isolated in our skepticism, and convincing us that we're the outcasts for questioning their official narrative, but the mechanics of how they manipulate the public have been mapped out in these experiments for decades. In 1951, the Ash conformity experiments proved exactly how propaganda and manufactured consensus work. And the setup was simple, as an ordinary person was placed in a room, along with 7 actors that were working for the experimenters. When tested alone on an obvious visual task, civilians got the answer right 99% of the time, and the truth was undeniable, but when those 7 actors unanimously shouted out a blatant lie, the psychological pressure took hold, and under the weight of a fake majority, 75% of the participants conformed and repeated the lie at least once. Across the entire study, citizens chose to deny their own senses and side with a clear falsehood 33% of the time, and that's exactly how the elites run their compliance scripts today. They use mainstream narratives and tailored algorithms to simulate a consensus that doesn't exist, forcing people to stay silent out of a manufactured fear of standing alone. But the system always hides the most critical findings that are deeper within the research. When the experimenters introduced just one single ally who broke ranks and spoke the truth, the entire spell shattered, and conformity plummeted from 33% down to just 5%. Think about the math of that resistance. It didn't take a massive army to break the control system, but it just took one voice, because one person refusing to repeat the lie had given everyone else the psychological permission to trust their own eyes. And right now we desperately need people who are willing to stand up and speak the truth, no matter how uncomfortable it feels, and no matter what fears are weaponized against them. Your voice is the compliance breaker, so speak up, break the consensus, and let the truth spread. We do not forgive, we do not forget. Anonymously enlightening out.
This child is at the
Alright.
center of one of the most scientifically unexplainable mysteries ever. He is convinced he's lived a past life, so he was put to the test, and the results are hard to ignore. Starting around 2 years old, Luke Ruhlman started obsessing over the name Pam. Eventually, his mom asked Luke who Pam was, and he said,
Pam was me once. Really. God threw me back down and my new mom named me Luke.
Now kids can say the strangest things, but over the months, Luke started talking about how he used to have black hair before he died. Confused by the death comments, Luke's mom started asking a lot more questions, and Luke had plenty of answers. He said he used to live in Chicago, he would take the train, and one night he had to jump out of a window during a massive building fire. So his mom started to investigate. She found that in 1993, well before Luke was born, there was a devastating fire at the Paxton Hotel in Chicago. 19 people died, and one of the victims who jumped from a window to escape the flames was a 30-year-old woman named Pam Robinson. Way too many things were lining up, so Luke's parents gave him another test. They hid Pam's picture in a lineup of random women and asked if he recognized anyone. Instantly, Luke pointed to Pam. But shortly after the connections to Pam were made, Luke's mom said he just stopped talking about her, almost like he just had to get it out and was finished once he finally did.
You know what? I think it's spirits giving him knowledge, not God, to listen to familiar spirits.
They are not aliens. They're ancient. What you call extraterrestrial, there are beings that fell, not from stars, but from grace, from the days when angels left their post and mingled with flesh. What they birthed wasn't human. It wasn't holy. And when the flood erased their bodies, their spirits stayed. They didn't come from galaxies, not from Mars, but from a realm between heaven and hell. They don't come in peace. They come in disguise. Shapeshifters, deceivers, pretending to be advanced when they're really ancient prisoners trying to regain power. They don't seek contact. They seek agreement. And every fascination with their image is a doorway to theirs. Because demons don't need to barge in if you call them enlightened. They'll come through curiosity, through sightings, through obsession masked as science. The enemy doesn't need you afraid. He needs you intrigued. These are not higher beings. They are fallen ones, masked in light, backed by deception, and rooted in rebellion. Stop calling it aliens. Call it what it is. Unclean spirits in modern disguise.
The Bible said 1/3 of the angels were expelled from heaven to the earth.
Ambrosia is when you take blood from young mammals, give it to older mammals, and they get a huge benefit. Okay? And the rich technocrats are now setting up a company called Ambrosia where they pay $8,000 for pints of blood from young people to old.
What?
Where did this come from the literature that you guys may have come across it? The parabiosis studies with mice. What did they do? They rerouted their circulatory systems from a young mouse to an old mouse and found out that the old mouse got younger. And that's where it originally began. But who do you need to know where all this stuff came from? This comes from the Methuselah Foundation. This is all the tech bros that are tied to the PayPal Mafia, even some of the guys that are tied to the beginnings of Bitcoin, but clearly all the guys involved in Palantir.
Isn't Elon Musk belong to PayPal Mafia?
Here, blood's a really big part of the story. And I know that blood's a big part of the story for regenerating bone. So what does Epstein get from all of this collaboration with these 4 scientists from the Human Genome Project? He finds out that melanin can be made very simply in a lab from adrenochrome. And he finds out that adrenochrome also is made from palm seed. Palm seed, as you guys know, has 11 different chemicals or peptides associated, but one of them has to be ACTH. That's tied to both cortisol and the ability to make adrenochrome. Adrenochrome is made from phenolic compound. They were trying to create adrenochrome to regenerate people. And that is why Becker gets canceled and how all this stuff is tied together.
Everything you thought you knew is a lie. It's time to wake up.
Now, Epstein was Jewish and a Zionist and had big connections to Israeli politicians, to the military, and to the intelligence community. And in the black book of Jeffrey Epstein's contacts are people like Tony Blair, of course, Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton. There is this psychopath in Saudi Arabia, this crown prince, Mohammed bin Salman, you know, the guy who was behind the bone saw cutting up of the journalist Jamal Khashoggi. Nice man. So Epstein had big connections. It also involves this web, something called the mega group. And this mega group connects us into Donald Trump, also a friend of Epstein. The mega group, a secretive group of billionaires, was formed in 1991 by Charles Bronfman and Leslie Wexner, a loosely organized club of 20 of the nation's wealthiest and most influential Jewish businessmen. And if you go deep enough into the web, to the level of cabal control, Mossad is the CIA, is British intelligence, is Australian intelligence and Canadian intelligence and French intelligence. And that web not only relates to pedophilia and Satanism, it relates to the forces that are controlling your life today. Virginia Giuffre claims that Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, who is alleged to have been the procurer of young girls for Epstein, trafficked her to politicians, princes, and a high-flying financier, among others. Epstein and Maxwell trafficked her to powerful people for erotic massages and sex. Maxwell directed her to have sex with former New Mexico Governor Bill Richardson, Britain's Prince Andrew, wealthy financier Glenn Dubin, former Senator George Mitchell, now deceased MIT scientist Marvin Minsky, and modeling agent Jean-Luc Brunel, as well as another prince, a foreign president, a well-known prime minister, and Harvard law professor Alan Dershowitz. Dershowitz was part of Epstein's legal team that secured his outrageous plea bargain deal in 2007. So you see, this is a global ring. What this ring does from its controlling core is to use pedophilia to compromise people it wants to control. Presidents or prime ministers or anyone of political and other influence who can make decisions that this cabal wants them to make to advance its agenda.
One ring to rule them all.
That is wild. But what's the purpose of releasing these selected files with no arrests? It doesn't make sense.
Owens seen on video touching a child and then smelling and licking her fingers. I mean, these freaks cannot control their urges when they are around children, and people still don't understand that we live amongst these satanic witches that are literally feeding off the youth of our children. The substance that they are extracting from our young ones is literally a multi-billion-dollar industry, and they have factories all around the world that are producing it.
We have people in the United States of America that breed children in order to sell them. And when they are sold, they come without birth certificates, which means it's easier to kill.
It's worth more than gold, platinum, and diamonds. And it's because It's the most anti-aging chemical that exists. It's literally the fountain of youth. And I cannot say what it is on here, but it rhymes with peanut phone. Favorite Hollywood stars, the politicians, the bankers have been using this substance for centuries now. Just read about Vlad the Impaler, King Charles. Check out the statues in Luxembourg. I mean, these stories about cannibals and vampires are not fairy tales, guys. Okay, but who cares about these monsters, okay? These are weak souls that have been tricked by Satan, and they will perish like the rest of all the other little demons. Okay, guys? God is great. You heard it here first. Odin's World.
They will answer to God.
Most people think but Dante gets there and it's frozen, silent, and still. A figure so vast that his chest forms a mountain. Satan stands before him, not raging and not triumphant, but weeping. And he represents a mockery of everything that was holy. His tears freeze as they fall, and the flapping of his wings generates the cold that keeps him frozen. He's not being punished from the outside. The prison is the motion itself. He's reaching for something that he chose to distance himself from. This longing has never stopped. He knows it could have been different, but he's frozen in time. Because evil has no independent existence. It's not a force, it's a distortion. Disordered love that's been inverted, frozen, and even in the absolute center of hell, the longing still remains. It just can't move, and Simone Weil called it gravity. Not metaphor, actual law. She said that grace is the only counter force. The void has to be so complete before the reversal even becomes possible. This is kenosis, the self-emptying, not as a spiritual technique, as cosmic necessity. The self has to exhaust itself completely before something else can even enter. And Dante has to climb down into this. He has to grab the shaggy flanks of the beast. The very thing that he fears the most, he has to descend down into absolute nothingness. And at the hip, the exact center of the earth. Virgil turns himself around. This process is grueling, and it costs something. The reorientation of the soul is not some magic trick. It is not a weekend retreat at a hot yoga event. It is work. It is both painful and physical. A complete realignment of everything that was down. Gravity reverses, and what was down becomes up. Same body, the same darkness, but the orientation shifts completely. The void is not the enemy. It's the latter. And the tears at the center of hell are distorted and frozen love, but they are still love. Love is what remains, but climbing down into the depths of hell, stripped of everything, was always the only way out.
The Epstein chalkboard I decoded showed a blueprint for social engineering, a map of how power organizes itself. So, who are the architects? It's simple. They're the multi-generational power networks, the families that pass money, influence, and control down the line while staying behind the front men. And they maintain that control through the main pillars of society. Finance, government and law, intelligence, media and technology, medicine, education, military and industry. That's why they use people like Epstein and families like the Maxwells to help manage different parts of the system. Different roles, different pillars, but it's the same network. That was the old analog model. Human operators placed in key positions to steer the machine. But now they're transitioning to the digital model. And that's what the blueprint was really showing. AI, data, surveillance, algorithms, a digital twin of society. And they're on a timeline to do this transition because major resets happen in cycles. These families study the stars, ancient records, and cataclysm patterns. They hide that knowledge from the public because they want control before the next reset hits. And when it hits, they want to maintain control after. That's why everything is getting exposed now, because the system is upgrading. They built the old system with human operators. Now they're shifting those same pillars into automated control. There will never be mass arrests because they built the very system that people are begging for justice from. So what you're seeing, people getting dragged in under oath like justice is finally happening, it's all theatrics. They're phasing out the old operators while the new system locks into place. The old system was analog. The new system is digital. And that's the beast they're building. But then we gotta ask, who's behind the architects?
That's why digital is for ultimate control.
Today, the Pope 1,000 years of tradition. Pope Leo XIV became the first Pope in history to personally stand before the world and present his own encyclical. An encyclical is the Pope's highest and most authoritative teaching, addressed to 1.4 billion Catholics and every person of goodwill on earth. Every pope before him handed that role to cardinals. But the Pope chose to deliver his message about the threat of AI to humanity himself. The document is called Magnifica Humanitas, Magnificent Humanity. 235 pages, the most significant moral statement on AI ever issued by any religious institution. He said, and I quote, "We are experiencing an eclipse of what it means to be human." He warned that AI is creating new forms of societal control, new forms of slavery. He said algorithmic decision-making is already denying people access to healthcare, employment, and security. He said morality cannot be determined by a few. And he warned what is needed is a more active political involvement that is capable of slowing things down when everything is accelerating. It's worth noting that the Pope chose to stand beside Christopher Olah, co-founder of the company the Trump administration blacklisted this year for refusing to allow the military to use its AI for mass domestic surveillance and fully autonomous weapons. Olah said at the Vatican, "We need moral voices that the incentives cannot bend." But just 4 days ago, Trump took a clear stand on the opposite side. Trump's own Commerce Department wrote an order requiring basic safety reviews of AI models before public release. Then Zuckerberg, Musk, and David Sachs called the president. Sachs is Trump's own AI advisor and a member of the PayPal mafia, the same network as Elon Musk and Peter Thiel. The same Peter Thiel who wrote in 2009, "I no longer believe that freedom and democracy are compatible." And Sachs and Thiel go back even further. They met at Stanford and co-wrote a book in 1995 called The Diversity Myth, arguing against multiculturalism. Hours before signing, they killed it. Trump pulled the order, and his reason, I quote, "We're leading China. We're leading everybody, and I don't want to do anything that's going to get in the way of that lead." The country Trump says we're beating is doing more to protect its citizens from AI than he is. Just last week, China announced it's drafting a comprehensive AI law to protect its people. China requires companies to inform users every 2 hours if they're talking to an AI. The same people who wrote a book against diversity and multiculturalism control this technology. They'll decide what the AI sees, what it values, what it serves, and who it leaves behind. The Pope says AI data belongs to humanity. The billionaire says it belongs to them. Who do you believe? Drop it in the comments.
AI without regulation is profoundly dangerous and ill-conceived.
Do you believe that Skinny Bob footage to be authentic?
I do, but
The CGI Bob.
somebody dressed it up with like fake
scratch
effects.
marks and
right.
Mhm.
But the original footage, yeah, that was real because that's exactly how they look. That's exactly how they move. And
really,
when the first time I saw it, I freaked out. Because it was like, your heart races a little bit.
You're just thinking, oh my God, they're real.
Right. Yeah, because it was like, it wasn't like I had a visual memory that I could sketch on paper.
Right.
But when
you knew it when you saw it.
When you saw it, you knew it. And so I know that's authentic. I mean, it's just every fiber of my being. You even if you had a guy come up and say, "Hey, look, I faked this with his 3D software," I'm going to think he's trying to make a name for himself. And he's faking it, faking it.
Right.
But yeah, so
you'd bet your life on it.
Yeah. Those are 4 little skinny bobs that I saw running out of my room.
You would swear that is real. That's wild.
Yeah, absolutely.
Bro, the Great Appalachian Valley in this paint was built by the Mississippian Mound people to keep the Europeans' 13 British colonies from spreading west. Check this video out.
The side of this mound to show y'all how big this is. Look at this causeway.
The 13 colonies sits east of the Appalachian Valley. And as you can see, that these are not mountains. Nature doesn't make straight lines. These were built by the Mississippian Mound people. And if you pay attention, all that land to the top, Baltimore, Washington, Philadelphia, Richmond, all that is the 13 colonies. When I zoom in, you can tell these were built by the Mississippian Mound people to keep the Europeans out. And it goes like that from Maine all the way to Georgia. Them ancient Geechee kingdoms, the Mississippian Mon people were messing them Europeans up. I'm telling you, man. Check this out, man.
That looks like a Great Wall.
Buckingham Palace has declined an official request to return the remains of an Ethiopian prince who they kidnapped, then held hostage for several years, and then unceremoniously buried in a British catacomb in the 19th century. Who is Ethiopia's Prince Alemayehu?
Poor boy.
And why did British colonizers kidnap a child after murdering his whole family? In 1862, in an effort to strengthen his empire, the prince's father, Emperor Tewodros II, sought an alliance with the British, but his requests were ignored by the then Queen Victoria. Angered by this, the emperor detained some British people who were in his kingdom. This action gave Queen Victoria the excuse she needed to further expand her territory in Africa. She immediately sent a huge military invading force to attack the kingdom. It comprised of some 13,000 British and Indian troops.
I'm still debating on when Nikola Tesla actually existed.
I've heard that theory too. I've heard a lot of people say that because the amount of patents that he filed in a very short amount of time, it was kind of inhuman.
Yeah, but there are other sort of stranger anomalies to Tesla. For example, he never had sex, so he has no offspring. There are no descendants from him.
How do you
But
know?
he did have siblings. One died. His older brother died when he was younger. It fell off a horse. But I cannot find a single living descendant. And I've reached out. I contacted his museum. They said that they didn't know the whereabouts of any of his descendants. The other thing is that if you look for video footage of him, this is a pioneer of technology who gave public talks and lectures and allegedly wrote for journals and magazines. People would pay him to come to dinner if they were having a dinner party. Everybody wanted him. He was top of the list. But there's no video footage of him, yet there is of his rival Edison, and there also is of Einstein, who once famously said that if you want to know who the most intelligent man in the world is, you need to speak to Nikola Tesla. So you've got someone at really the forefront of technology with no video footage and no living descendants and just a handful of images. We always see the same ones of him over his entire lifespan. So I find that strange. And to do what, as you quite rightly said, achieve what he did in quite a short period of time is unusual.
Erase him and his bloodline because he made energy free.
You remember the scene? You remember what Alice said to Bill in this scene? She said, "I'm going to the bathroom." But she didn't. We never saw it. Ever. She ends up standing next to this fucking guy who's drinking her drink. And she's definitely toasty in this scene. Not only is she standing with him, she ends up dancing with the guy. And flirting too. Like, really flirting. I fucking hate this guy. All right, so fast forward. When Bill is in Domino's room, he gets a call from his wife, Alice, who says, "I'm going to sleep." Guess what? We don't see that either. And I don't think Kubrick showed it to us for a reason. Kubrick only hides actions that change power. He never shows us the power shift. The bathroom, the bedroom are places where decisions are made. So when Alice says she's going to the bathroom, or when she says she's going to sleep, and we don't see it, that's really, really important. Bill needs specific rules to enter different worlds. He needs invitations and passwords and costumes. But Alice doesn't need those things. She moves through this movie very confidently and with a lot of attraction. Doors open for her without asking. So this is the real question. And I know you all love a conspiracy theory because you're bombarding my comments with conspiracy theories, and I love it. Did Alice go to the mansion when she told Bill she's going to sleep? I have no idea, and Kubrick never tells us because it's really not the point. What's important is that Alice can move through spaces that Bill can't access, places that Bill cannot control. The threat to Bill isn't if Alice cheated on him. It's that she has the freedom that Bill doesn't. And ultimately, Kubrick is showing us that he can't follow her there. So to my social media fam, do you think Alice was at the mansion that night? Drop your comments down below and bring the conspiracy theories, please. And don't forget to follow, like, share, and favorite for more. I'm having the best time with you guys dissecting the fuck out of this film.
The movie is so underrated, and it's a master class.
There's something right here. I think they're lying to us about why we need to be building all of these AI data centers.
I'm here in Mansfield, Georgia, driving by Meta's new 2 million square foot data center facility.
2 million
Facilities like this are being used to power things like ChatGPT and other AI tools that are becoming integrated into our daily life.
They're saying that that's what it's being used for, but I'm not sure because there's not that much need. It's like it doesn't take that much power.
That's why I told you.
Right? It's got to be some kind of surveillance thing.
I'm telling
it's
you.
It's not to power ChatGPT.
Block C, cell A24,
Yeah.
maybe like 2 million square feet.
We have 10x probably around there in terms of the number of data centers and the capacity, quote unquote, of compute compared to other countries. So I do think it's weird. They keep saying we need like more data centers. We already have a shitload of data centers. They literally want the power to know what each individual is doing at any given time. So maybe it's not a physical jail that you go in, like, cell 8C or whatever, but it's like they want the power to be able to monitor everybody at any given time.
Right, because what's happening? More and more people are going against Israel.
What? Surveillance and pre-crime enforcement.
No, what they're going to say is that there are no aliens. That's what they're going to say. That's what.
You think so?
Yes. That's what the report and the investigations have said. Yes. That's why J.D. Vance said what he said about it being demons, because there's been versions of the report that have already been submitted to the White House. They've already been briefed.
Wow. That's crazy.
That's what they're going to say, that in fact, that there are no aliens, they're demons. And they're going to reveal the breadth of fraud that has been perpetuated against the American people.
Listen, I would say, oh, happy day if that came out. I would start singing, I'm telling you. And I'd go, let's go, let's go. Just like trying to find, invisible Somalian children all over the USA, okay? And the trillions of dollars has gone towards that mess. I would say, oh, happy day. But boy, it's going to take some...
They are fallen angels.
This is why you're seeing all these documentaries and films coming out now that are trying to reinforce the alien narrative, because it's about to come apart. They're going to rip it apart.
Okay, well, I hope they do. I hope they do, man. And especially if they're going to say, look, this thing's demonic. These things are real, and this thing is demonic. What is real is the fight between light and darkness. What's real is fight between angels and demons. And which team are you going to be on?
Did you know that before the Nazis existed, there was a secret occult society that gave birth to their darkest ideas? There are things about history they never taught you in school, and this is one of them. In 1918, deep in Munich, a mysterious group called the Thule Society gathered in shadows. They weren't politicians, they weren't soldiers, they were occultists, believers in dark magic and ancient secrets. These men were convinced that a race of godlike beings once ruled the earth from a mythical land called Hyperborea. They practiced forbidden rituals, held seances, tried to contact these ancient spirits for guidance. But here's what makes this truly disturbing. Among their members were Rudolf Hess and Hans Frank, future Nazi leaders. The society funded secret expeditions to Tibet and Antarctica, searching for entrances to a hollow earth where these beings supposedly still lived. Their symbol was a swastika surrounded by a wreath and sword. Sound familiar? In 1925, the Thule Society officially disbanded, but many historians believe they simply went underground, continuing to influence Nazi policy from the shadows. Their occult beliefs about racial superiority became the foundation for the Holocaust. The line between mysticism and evil had been crossed.
What happens when an anthropologist studying sorcery starts experiencing things he can't explain?
This might be one of the most fascinating books about magic and anthropology I've ever read. In Sorcery's Shadow by Paul Stoller and Cheryl Oakes. This is Mulder's Bookshelf. Follow for serious paranormal book recs. During fieldwork among the Sangay in Niger, anthropologist Paul Stoller becomes apprenticed to a sorcerer, learning incantations, herbalism, spirit possession practices, and the social role of sorcery in Sangay life. What begins as research slowly turns into something much more personal. Stoller describes being driven from a village by spirits after angering a local priestess, an intense paralysis experience in Nigerian center of sorcery, and moments that force him to question whether these practices are more than symbolism or belief. What makes this book so compelling is that it challenges the assumption that Western rationalism is the only valid way to understand reality. Instead of dismissing these experiences, Stoller argues that taking them seriously is essential to understanding culture itself. If you're interested in anthropology, magic, spirit possession, or the intersection of belief and experience, this is absolutely worth reading. Would you participate in this kind of fieldwork?
The most powerful man in Europe walked away from his own throne to chase the secret of living forever. And to find it, he filled an entire castle with men who swore they could speak to the angels. His name was Rudolf II, Holy Roman Emperor, head of Habsburgs, the family that ruled most of Europe, and poured the imperial treasury into one obsession: the philosopher's stone, the thing that could turn lead into gold, cure any disease, and grant eternal life. And the two men he trusted with that dream weren't scientists or priests. They were a pair of Englishmen who claimed he was taking direction from the angels. This video is a part of my mini-series on the darker side of family dynasties. Today, the emperor who chose magic over his throne. The first was John Dee, Queen Elizabeth's own astrologer, maybe the most learned man in England. The second was his crystal geyser, Edward Kelly, who would stare into the mirror and receive the words of angels. Kelly had lost both of his ears back in England, cropped off as a punishment for forgery, and he hid his wounds under his cap. And funny thing, the gold never came from the cheap metal, because of course it didn't. So the emperor took his knighted angel summoner and threw him in a castle prison. Kelly finally died falling from a tower trying to escape, and under that exact same roof, Rudolf was also bankrolling the real thing, the astronomers Tycho and Johannes. The birth of modern science and the hunt for magic gold happening in the same building. His own relatives had decided behind his back that his brother would place him, and piece by piece, his brother took it. Austria, Hungary, Moravia, and finally in 1611, Bohemia itself. Rudolf was left holding an emperor's title with nothing behind it, and he died a year later. No gold, no heir, and no eternal life. But buried in his collection of wonders was one object that did cheat death. A single book, 240 pages of vellum, covered front to back in a script that matches no language on Earth, illustrated with plants that don't exist, swirling star charts, and naked women bathing in rivers of green. And then he paid 600 gold coins for it, a small fortune at the time. Today, we call it the Voynich manuscript. And in the 400 years since, every scholar, every World War II codebreaker, and the cryptographers at NSA, and now our most advanced AI, not one has ever been able to read a word of it. He gave up the most powerful throne in Europe to unlock the secrets of creation and died with nothing to show of it. The one secret he may have actually owned is still sitting in a library at Yale, and 4 centuries later, we still can't open it. If you like this video and want to see more of it, follow so my next video can find you in your feed. Because next up, the heiress to the Americans' deadliest rifle became convinced she was being hunted by the ghosts of everyone it ever killed, so she spent 38 years building a mansion designed to trap them. Cheers. I'll see you there.
Angels, I think that's the wrong word for them. Fallen angels, maybe.
What are we to understand about the Nephilim now?
When you have a person who are calling a giant or a Nephilim, we're talking about sort of a fully demonized human.
They're genetically different from people.
There was this advanced civilization. There was a flood that destroyed it. So in the pagan sources, that pre-flood world was this golden age of high technology. Technology in the ancient Near Eastern mind included magic. Magic was a sort of spiritual technology. Losing that world was sort of this great tragedy. And
but everyone agreed it was a more advanced world than the world they lived in.
Yes. Yes. That there was knowledge there that had now been mostly lost. There's a text called the Book of the Giants that we found among the Dead Sea Scrolls. It includes a list of the giants, a list of the Nephilim, and Gilgamesh is one of the names. Goliath is sort of one of the last stragglers.
The one sin that can't be forgiven is blasphemy of the Holy Spirit.
Christ was working miracles and teaching and healing.
Yep.
A certain group of his opponents accused him of being demon-possessed.
Correct.
If you're not willing to accept and submit yourself to God and to his spirit and what he's doing in the world, you can't be forgiven. You can't be healed.
What if I told you that Dracula wasn't just horror fiction? Rather, it was actually created as a social critique of Jews. With the new movie that was just released, The Legend of Count Dracula is back on people's minds. But what almost nobody knows is that the original book Dracula by Bram Stoker was actually a dark satire about the social issue of the surge of Ashkenazi Jews that was moving into England at the time. I know you might think I'm reaching with this one, but just watch. So first we have Dracula's origin and appearance. He is described as being pale, having black hair and bushy eyebrows. But the beaky, aquiline nose is the key feature. This characteristic hooked nose is present in virtually every anti-Semitic caricature in history. But it goes deeper. So why would Bram Stoker concern himself at all with Jews in the first place? Well, it's because in the 1880s and 1890s, over 150,000 Jews poured into England as refugees from Eastern Europe, which is of course where Dracula came from. And why did that happen? Because in 1881, Tsar Alexander II was assassinated by mainly Jewish communist terrorists, the exact same kind of people that would later plot the Bolshevik Revolution. In retaliation, pogroms erupted all across the Pale of Settlement region. That's the region of Europe where most Jews lived after having been exiled from Christian kingdoms over centuries prior. But while most of these Jews were working class, some of them had tremendous wealth. Those were mainly the moneylenders who made massive fortunes off of usury and manipulation of markets. So here we have yet another sign. Jonathan Harker, the lawyer that he hires to buy real estate in London, is tasked with buying properties there by Dracula, but to do it strategically with the intent of manipulating real estate prices. It is notable that by the 1890s, many wealthy Jewish families like the Rothschilds had managed to infiltrate royal families and ultimately achieve royal titles, mostly by buying them, and this was very controversial in 19th century Europe. That's exactly why Dracula is portrayed as a count. But he's not just manipulating prices. Dracula specifically wants access to high society England so he can infiltrate it and corrupt it with his evil. In the wake of the ongoing Epstein scandal, this reference should be easy to discern. There are many other references. The boxes of dirt Dracula sleeps in are called out to smell like Old Jerusalem by the dock workers. His assistant Hildesheim is described as an old Hebrew. And of course, Dracula has an obvious aversion to Jesus and to the cross, which Jews have always had animosity toward, and the list goes on. But the most obvious reference of all is that Dracula is a bloodsucker. And I don't just mean in the financially parasitic way, which is definitely another of their stereotypes based on greed and usury. I mean the actual drinking of blood, which is an ancient stereotype based on a concept called blood libel. But you're going to have to research that one on your own. There are even more really interesting references to this, so if you're interested, make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel. The link is in my bio.
This is wild, folks.
Oh, look, it's Mandy standing between two columns, and the plague doctor is approaching her. Look at this image, fam. Kubrick is defining a threshold moment here.
I think the two pillars is a symbol of Freemasonry. So our eyes.
There are two pillars here, two columns that mark a boundary between worlds. The visible and the hidden. The life people believe they're living and the deeper layer moving underneath it. And Mandy stands directly in between them. Mandy is standing in the same position as the high priestess. You know, the one who carries knowledge that others aren't meant to touch. Mandy sees what this mansion party is truly all about. This is a hidden order built on desire and power and consequences. Bill moves through it unaware, but Mandy is totally aware. She's standing inside of it with total awareness. And now the plague doctor arrives. This is a figure tied to removal, purification, to restore balance when something has gone too far. And Dr. Plague arrives without any hesitation. He knows exactly what he's doing here. He arrives as if the outcome has already been decided. He's also kind of the opposite of what Bill is. Bill's a doctor that took an oath, but this is the plague doctor. We'll get to that in another video. And now we have the high priest, Red Cloak. He represents power in this hidden world, the one who determines what continues and what disappears. And Mandy gets it. She understands what's about to happen. She's not resisting Dr. Plague. She stepped forward because she holds knowledge that Bill doesn't. And knowledge at this level carries enormous weight. Look, there's 2 more columns. So these columns frame this moment as a crossing. Bill reaches the edge and turns right the fuck back. But Mandy stands at this edge and passes through. She carries the truth of what's really happening in this mansion. And that truth just removed her from the world that she's living in. Look at what Kubrick is showing us with these columns. He's leaving a quiet message for us. Reality has layers, and once someone sees beyond the surface, there's no return. What are your thoughts on the columns, the plague doctor, and Mandy's sacrifice? Drop a comment. And don't forget to follow, like, share, and favorite for more deep dives. I had to cross them out.
So I want you guys to check out this video of Melania Trump that was just shared by a gentleman over.
Man, that's Melania?
On Instagram. I've never seen any of these photos before. Is this the crazy shit that she got in front of and she was trying to get out ahead of? Because I heard somebody's about to start leaking some stuff. Check out this tweet from Diligent. Melania Trump used to work as a model of Donald Trump's friend, Paolo Zappalli. In a nasty divorce, Zappalli allegedly had Trump use ICE to deport his ex-wife, Amanda Ungaro. Now, Amanda is now set to do an interview this weekend and tell all about Melania, Epstein, Trump, and Zappalli. This is what Melania's press random conference was about yesterday. They are all trying to get ahead of this bombshell. And if you aren't following Diligent, swing over there and give that man a follow because the work that he's doing is absolutely fantastic. Now, these photos, it's so hard to tell with AI what's real and what's not real. So Melania is always allegedly innocent until proven guilty, or she's always innocent until proven guilty. Everything in this video is just allegedly. But I've never seen half of these photos. These are some really strange, really bizarre photos, especially the one that looked like
are they real?
Melania was like dancing on a pole in front of Epstein. Which you look at all of like how this whole thing came about and this weird press conference that she had, none of it's adding up. They wanted Epstein and Trump out, and Trump wanted Epstein out of the headlines so bad he started fucking World War III with Iran. And he's completely collapsed our military. He's sent our sons and daughters off to die. He's become the most hated and despised president in all of American history. And yeah, it's fucking crazy. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think. If this shit's real or not real. I have a feeling things are about to get spicy this week.
I don't know what's real anymore,
Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. We out.
Black nobility refers to a series of Roman aristocratic families that have controlled the Roman Catholic Church for more than 1,000 years. The Pamphili family are considered members of the black nobility that have produced leaders of the Catholic Church, secret societies like the Knights of Malta, banks like Goldman Sachs, and even LGBTQ advocates like Jonathan Pamphili. After Giovanni Battista Pamphili was elected pope and chose the name Innocent X, Pope Innocent X declared Protestants' right to worship null, void, and invalid. Pope Innocent X went so far as to wage physical war on Protestants. Pope Innocent X was also widely rumored to have an intimate, immoral relationship with his sister-in-law, Olympia Mattalicini, the widow of his brother. Her influence was so extensive that ambassadors and cardinals often addressed matters directly to her, believing that Pope Innocent X would defer to her. Pope Innocent X engaged in nepotism by elevating family members, including his nephew Camilla Francesca Maria Pamphili, to the position of cardinal. Anna Pamphili married Genoese Prince Giovanni Andrea Doria Landi on October 25, 1671, merging the Pamphili family with the Doria and Landi lines. The Doria family, a prominent Genoese noble lineage, have significant ties to various knightly orders. The Dorias are also named in Gold's History of Freemasonry in the context of establishing a Grand Lodge. The Doria and Sacchetti families are prominent Italian noble houses with a long history of intermarriage. The name Doria translates to golden. The name Sacchetti translates to bags or sacks. Goldman Sachs was started by none other than Samuel Sachs. Sachs is the anglicized form of the Italian surname Sacchetti. In 2021, the Orsini Palace in Rome hosted a press conference attended by more than 50 journalists in honor of Giulio and Giovanna Sacchetti, Present at this luncheon, among others, were the Knights of Malta, led by Antonio Zanardi Landi, who's an Italian ambassador to the Holy See and the Order of the Knights of Malta, along with his wife, Sabina Medici. The head of the Doria Pamphili family today is Prince Jonathan Doria Pamphili. Jonathan Pamphili is a homosexual who works with LGBTQ rights groups, including the Rainbow Families and EDGE, lobby group for gay professionals. Prince Jonathan Pamphili Landi is also a co-owner of the renowned Palazzo Doria Pamphili in Rome. Doria Pamphili Gallery and Estate serves as the Anglican Center in Rome and acts as a bridge between the Anglican Communion and the Catholic Church. While the Catholic Church in large parts of the world have been controlled by members of the black nobility, like the Pamphili family, who have produced leaders of the Catholic Church, secret societies like the Knights of Malta, banks like Goldman Sachs, and even LGBTQ advocates like Jonathan Pamphili. John chapter 18 and verse 36 says, "My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, then would my servants fight that I would not be delivered to the Jews. But now is my kingdom not from hence." Romans chapter 12 and verse 2 says, "And be not conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that ye may prove what is the good and acceptable and perfect will of God."
This documentary is a raw and honest account of child SA, and it's extremely hard to listen to.
Oh my goodness.
But I'm so glad that I found it because it's kind of a hidden gem. The documentary starts with the daughter and director telling her story about how she was SA'd as a child by her cousin. And trigger warning, she goes into detail and it's pretty graphic and hard to listen to. For a long time, her relationship was strained with her mother and she didn't really understand why, and at times even felt judged by her. But then she discovers these letters where she finds out that her mother was also a victim of childhood SA. If you love documentaries, hit follow because I post daily and you'll always have something to watch. And that trauma even carried on into her early adult life, and it's brutal what her mother went through. And then they even sit down with her family, and the things that they start telling each other is so shocking, and they kept these secrets from one another for decades. It's a testament to how family trauma can go on for decades and be passed on generation after generation, especially how people don't talk about this going on in their families, and it can just make it worse. I love finding little indie films like this that are so good that I know you guys will love. Let me know what you think about this in the comments.
This week we're celebrating the bejeweled, masked bones of Saint Aurelius. We've talked about these catacomb saints before. Christian martyrs pulled from the Roman catacombs and dressed up by Goth nuns in the 16th to 18th centuries to represent a specific saint, or in some cases a mix of two saints. They didn't care. And you'll notice that this corpse from the Church of Saint Michael the Archangel in Porto, Portugal, initially thought to be just a simple saintly sculpture until they x-rayed it and discovered, oops, a skeleton. Saint Aurelius is wearing this wax mask instead of his natural gorgeous bone face like Saint Pancras here. After the Goth nuns did their thing, some churches decided that dope Gothicism was too extreme and off-putting for the public, so they gave their display corpses loser masks. And this should be offensive to anyone with a skeleton inside of them. This Aurelius corpse and this Saint Benedict in Saint Verena's Church of Rot look like a tragic mix of Lord Farquaad and Prince Charming. Now, a lot of saints are incredibly boring in life and in death. Having a resplendent, bejeweled martyr skeleton on display with their name is really the only thing they have going for them. You take this away, and they have nothing. And no hate to the actual actor martyr skeletons underneath the mask. They're doing Oscar caliber work, especially this Aurelius and this Saint Benedict's come hither poses. I'm interested. I came to the church to see some Gothic skeletons, so now you have me. You can mold my mind and beliefs with your rituals. Isn't that the deal? Join us next week or never again for another.
There's a guy named Carl in Wyoming. He's hunting in the Medicine Bow National Forest alone. He sees some elk 100 yards away, lines up with his rifle, boom. And he says, Dave, it's like everything went into slow motion. I see the bullet come out the gun about 3 or 4 feet, and it drops to the ground.
Man, the guy looks like El Chapo.
He says, I walked over, and he goes, the elk didn't move, and I pick it up, the bullet. I put the bullet in my pocket, and then 2 alien-type entities walk up to me, and they engage him in mind speak. And what they do is they eventually take him on a craft, and they take the elk on the craft. And it's like the elk are frozen there in time. And they have him march behind a screen. And they said, we don't want you. You're going back, mind of mine. And he goes, what's going on? He goes, you're going back. He says, the next thing I remember is falling 10 to 15 feet, he's guessing. He hits his shoulder, probably displaces it, and he rolls down a hill. They're already searching for him because he's missing, his wife, the sheriff. And they take him back, and they take him to a hospital, and they're taking x-rays, and he had tuberculosis scars as a kid. Those are no longer there. And he had other medical issues that are completely cured. The investigators came out, and the Wyoming Department of Law Enforcement looked at that bullet and did an exam on it. And they could not figure out what that bullet hit to make it deform in the manner that it did. I have pictures of it in the movie. It's very odd.
See if you can find are the pictures online? I'm looking. Of course you are.
If you go to Tubi, Tubi, Missing 411 The Hunted, the movie's there for free. You guys could watch it.
Also, check out Gearheads Gone Wild. It's my friend's show.
Okay, so no tuberculosis scars, the bullet. So I'm talking to Carl, and I said, well, why do you think they sent you back? He says, well, I think it's because I had a vasectomy. I said, oh, did they say anything to you about that? No. Okay. So he was 91 years old when I interviewed him, sharp as a tack.
How old was he when this encounter happened?
I think he was 38, 39. And again, this happened in the Medicine Bow National Forest.
Where's that?
Medicine Bow is directly, I'd say about 75 miles northwest of Cheyenne. So at about the same time, the Air Force Base in Cheyenne is having a group of cluster UFO sightings above the ICBM sites. And that was never made public at this time. It was 30, 40, 50 years later through Robert Hastings and other Air Force personnel came out that these documents started to show.
You guys, the pyramids just got a reboot. They all came back online. Not one, but all of them across the planet. And a few days before this even happened, I had the craziest dream that involved frequencies and the pyramids. So the report I find really interesting, and also the fact that it happened at 3:33 a.m. and there's a lot of threes, because in my dream specifically, I was given a series of numbers and also a glyph or a shape that I didn't understand. But when somebody asked me about what does it mean when they were showing me this information on paper, I said, oh, it's a sound, it's a frequency. And then I naturally wanted to like hum the frequency in my dream. And then when I did that, I was transported to a set of tunnels or halls that were directly underneath the pyramids themselves. And I understood that in order to enter into these tombs or halls that were below the pyramids, that it was all sound and frequency based. So what does that mean exactly at this moment? I checked in with my guides. So I went to the source and I channeled Sayshot and said, what's the deal? Like, is this
Channel who?
real? What's going on? Her response to me was, yes, all of the pyramids are being reactivated as the Earth's grid and magnetic field is starting to vibrate and expand. This is all coinciding with the Earth's natural shift. It wasn't always available to us before, but again, we're moving through multiple shifts in densities and frequencies now, so things are going to start switching up. So personally, you may remember that when I was visiting Egypt, I went into the pyramids and I wanted to channel and experience this thing that I had seen so many other spiritualists experiencing, all these profound transformations. I went inside and said that I felt nothing. It was almost as if I was being disconnected from source itself or muted. It was super strange to me. And when I mentioned this to our Egyptian guide, he also said that many of these historic places and temples were no longer activated and they weren't working the same anymore. So many people called me crazy and full of shit and that I just didn't know how to work with the pyramids. I wasn't experiencing anything because it wasn't active. It was in a neutral 0 point energetic field. And now that we have experienced this other shift in frequency and the pyramids are all emitting a new vibration, I'm curious what'll happen. Anyway. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments.
Some say the Aztecs didn't come from Mexico at all.
And yes, they called themselves the Mexica. Their ancestors spoke of a sacred homeland, a paradise with red stones, 4 sacred rivers, and 7 mysterious caves. For centuries, no one could agree on where it was. But in 1990, 2 researchers said, what if this mythical place isn't so mythical? They found a place with those rivers, with those rocks, with those caves, and rock art that looked eerily familiar. The place? It's an island in a large body of salt water, and it's full of herons, like Aztlan. And it's not in Mexico. It's over 1,000 miles away in Utah. Some say it's wild speculation. Some say it checks too many boxes to ignore. So, what do you believe? The full video dives into the clues of the scholars and people who say Aztlan may not be just a legend after all.
There is a truly spiritual, alchemical shift that occurs when you start pursuing physical beauty for the sake of reflecting your inner beliefs and values instead of just trying to get more power and more pussy. Ancient warrior cultures revered the practice and ritual of making themselves more beautiful, and that is because they knew that true beauty is not only awe-inspiring, but also strikes fear in the hearts of the enemies. As early as Homer, we are told of the long-haired Achaeans who would groom themselves to be as beautiful as possible in an attempt to liken themselves to the beauty of the divine gods. As the old saying goes, look good, feel good. In Book 7 of Herodotus' Histories, he recounts a story of how a Persian spy infiltrated a Greek camp to see what the men were getting up to before the Battle of Thermopylae, and to his astonishment, he found the Spartan warriors combing their hair and exercising, seemingly unfazed by the events that were to unfold. Herodotus recounts that Xerxes, upon hearing this, was baffled, but Herodotus notes that what these men were doing was preparing to die and to deal death to the Persians with the greatest force possible. This practice was of course not exclusive to the ancient Greeks, as it can be seen dating back to Bronze Age Indo-European warrior graves. These warriors were commonly buried alongside their weapons and armor, as well as grooming tools like combs, razors, mirrors, oils, tweezers, and even tools for tattooing. And this is because the ritual of grooming and beautification of the body was seen as a sacred rite to the warrior. Tacitus recounts in his Germania that Germanic boys were not allowed to cut or style their hair in any way until they had confirmed their first kill in battle. Boys were meant to remain wolvish and unkempt until they were able to prove themselves worthy of self-beautification. This practice even extends to the style and type of armor that was worn in battle, like the implementation of horsehair crests on helmets to appear taller and more fearsome, because nothing looks more deadly than a beautiful man with a flowing mane charging at you at full speed. Not only would this inspire fear in the enemy and make one feel closer to the gods in all of their beauty and splendor, but it also ensured that if one were to meet their death in battle, they would be leaving behind the most beautiful corpse possible. This idea is reflected in Yukio Mishima's work Sun and Steel, where he pursues the cultivation of his body in the same way that one cultivates a garden to produce the best harvest possible. The cultivation of the garden is ultimately oriented to the purpose of the harvest in the same way that the cultivation of the body is oriented towards its eventual death. Death is inevitable. Death is the only possibility, and one must orient themselves towards achieving it properly and heroically in achieving it beautifully. But what exactly is this inextricable link between a heroic death and beauty?
The body is God's temple.
You cannot buy your way into the real upper class, and in 1979, a French sociologist proved exactly why. His name was Pierre Bourdieu, and he found that the families at the very top aren't separated from everyone else by money. They're separated by something else called habitus, a kind of taste that you can only inherit but never purchase. This is day 1 of my 30-day series on habitus, the hidden code Bourdieu spent his entire life mapping out. Today, the inheritance of taste. Picture 2 paintings crossing the block at a major auction, only 1 hour apart. One sells for $90 million to a tech billionaire. The other one goes for $400,000 to a quiet European family that no one in the room recognizes. And the dealers? They're not watching the $90 million sale. They're watching the $400,000 one, and here's exactly why. The billionaire bought the expensive painting, but the family bought the correct one, a lesser-known master, a piece of the real provenance. What you cannot buy at any price is the ability to walk into an old money dinner and know which painting to compliment, which wine to order, and which subject to never bring up. And there's a name for that ability. It's the inheritance of taste. Taste is a currency which is accumulated and transmitted and handed down. Elite kids are marinated in it from birth. The music in the house, the objects on the shelf, the way a meal is served. By the time they're grown, they don't know expensive from correct as a fact that they've learned. they feel it. In art, correct isn't the trophy
that's
everyone's
good.
bidding on. It's the quiet master with the deeper story. In clothes, it isn't the logo, it's the cut, the cloth, and the detail only another insider would actually clock. In food, it isn't necessarily the Michelin stars, it's the regional dish, the old method, the ingredients that almost nobody has heard of. And here's where it turns on you. The system has no bouncer, no velvet rope, and no one who ever actually tells you. It keeps you out without a single word being said, and almost everyone it keeps out walks away blaming themselves. Because it's a glance that lasts a half second too long, a smile that's perfectly polite and perfectly distant, a conversation that drifts the moment you arrive towards something obscure, a place, a name, a reference that you were never handed a map to. Nobody's rude, nobody asks you to leave, you just slowly figure out on your own that the room was never built for you. So here's your lens. The next time you're choosing something, a watch, a bottle, a school, even a word, stop and ask yourself one question. Am I buying what's expensive or am I buying what's correct? And whatever the answer is, sit with that because it just told you where you actually stand. Tell me in the comments, what's a correct taste that you've watched signal belonging in a room that you weren't sure you were allowed in? And if you enjoyed this content, make sure you click the link in my description to go subscribe to me on YouTube where there's a long form version of this exact topic. Thank you so much.
You buy what works for you. Some people like wine. I like whiskey.
In the mountains between Spain and France lived the only people in Western Europe who were still openly pagan when the witchcraft trials began. The Basques, a population so distinct from their neighbors that historians still cannot fully explain their origins. And prior to Roman Catholic priests arriving around 1000 AD, the entire region had been heavily pagan. Their sacred sites are scattered across Pyrenees, caves, springs, wells, and mountain peaks. The most infamous is a plain in Navarre called Aquelarre, literally meaning goat pasture, believed to be the site of ancient sacrificial ceremonies. The Greek geographer Strabo documented the sacrifice of rams as central to their religion centuries before any inquisitor arrived. They encountered a culture so unfamiliar that historians still debate whether what they called witchcraft was Basque paganism, being completely misread as Satanism. If the accused confessed to witchcraft and renounced their pagan beliefs, the church would forgive them, then hand the documents to the Catholic monarchy anyway, who could still invoke the death penalty. The church kept its hands clean while ensuring the outcome remained the same. They became the last population in Western Europe to fully convert, and underneath centuries of devout Catholicism, an equally strong spiritual tie to their pagan roots never disappeared. Today, Basque witchcraft had been openly revived, with direct ties to Basque cultural identity. The same word for witch still carries the memory of what came before the cross arrived. For the deep layer of what Basque paganism actually practiced, I go much further inside my private study circle on Telegram, link is in my bio. What do you think survives in your own bloodline, from before the religion that claims it?
This movie will change the way that you see reality. It's from 30 years ago, and they told you the entire story of how the world was set up and how a demonic spirit or a fallen angel is here, tormenting humans and keeping the consciousness in a loop. You see, the demon can literally switch humans at any time. It survives through using the consciousness of another, and it takes over what we would know as a possession. Here you're going to see he follows it into the street to confront it because it keeps taking over other individuals and singing the same song to him, telling him time. Then this part he goes to an isolated house and discovers the name of this fallen angel who has been here for thousands of years. Have entities attached to them, whether it's this demon or not. And if you want help removing these entities from your energy body and awakening your consciousness to escape this loop, you can contact me for a one-on-one session through radenlightenment@gmail.com.
Fallen angels are bounded. The spirit of the Nephilim roams and possesses.
Just be the most disturbing new development in AI.
Introducing Objection, the first AI tribunal. Former CIA and FBI agents will investigate. They gather evidence and make it public, permanently. The AI tribunal checks the record and renders the verdict. From the team that bankrupted Gawker, mastermind Aaron D'Souza, and investor Peter Thiel, comes Objection. Truth isn't what goes viral. It's verified. File an objection.
Yeah, I don't know. That gives me the heebie-jeebies just watching that thing. Like, it's that whole video sus as hell. They're calling it the Tribunal of Truth. Objection: a new technology platform founded by entrepreneur Aaron D'Souza and backed by investors including Peter Thiel and Balaji Srinivasan has launched with an explicit mandate to subject the media's claims to systemic investigation and judgment by artificial intelligence. The system combines investigators such as former FBI, NSA, and CIA professionals, adversarial evidence review, and finally AI adjudication. Wow, so basically AI fact-checking funded by the Antichrist to protect his brethren.
You know what? Can we file objections against them for future crimes against humanity?
So there might be multiple demons.
Yes.
What's
like I
the
said,
most you've seen?
The one that I've seen the most is 27.
27 demons in one human?
Yeah. Most of them, it's somewhere between
It's called Legion.
1 to 8.
How many demons are there?
Billions, literally. When God created all the angels, he created the entire hierarchy of angels instantaneously all at once. Of the class of the angels alone, there's one subset, which is the guardian angels. And every human being that has been born has had a guardian angel created specifically for that particular individual. So you're talking billions just in that one subclass. The number of angels that fell, where Satan took a third of the stars with his tail and swept them down. That means that a third of the angels actually fell. Most of the possessions that we see are from the top rank, which is the top 3 choirs. Satan, Lucifer, Baal, Asmodeus, Leviathan, Lilith, Baphomet, Moloch. There's also other ones like Abaddon, who are kind of in the middle. And then you'll see a lot of the lower grunt guys at the bottom, whose job is to just kind of do the bidding of the guys at the top.
This is the most famous painting of famine in British art. Almost everyone misreads what it's showing. This is Famine, painted by John Charles Dolman in 1904. A shrouded figure of death strides across a dead landscape. Wolves run at his side. Ravens circle overhead. Everything about it says starvation, bodies, hunger, the slow death of the deprived. And almost everyone who sees it reads it exactly that way. But that's not what Dolman painted. He said this was never about an empty stomach. It was about an empty soul, a famine of the human spirit, the death of the self that comes from neglecting it. The wolves aren't circling a starving body. They're circling a soul that's been left to rot. Once you know that, the whole painting changes. The wasteland isn't a failed harvest. It's a person who stopped feeding the part of them that mattered. What do you see looking at this painting? Write in the comments. I am genuinely interested.
This just became my favorite documentary of the year, and I am so happy that I get to be the one to tell you guys about it. Hopefully I can get through telling you guys about this without having a mental breakdown. This is the story of Angela Madsen, a Paralympian who sets out to be the first paraplegic and oldest woman to row the Pacific Ocean alone. And I need you guys to understand that rowing the Pacific Ocean is one of the most dangerous endurances that anybody can do ever in the whole world, more dangerous than climbing Mount Everest. This documentary covers Angela's preparation for this journey during and after, and it had me sobbing from beginning to end. Angela's story is not just an inspiration to women. It is not just an inspiration to differently abled people. It is not just an inspiration to queer people. It is an inspiration to people in general. This documentary and documentaries like this is the reason why I fell in love with this genre. People deserve to hear Angela's story, and I cannot wait for you guys to see this documentary. You can watch Row of Life on June 23rd on Apple TV, YouTube, and Google.
This guy might be the most underrated man in history. Born in 1900, he traveled around the Middle East in his age like 20, 21, 22, as a journalist for a German newspaper, just riding around by camel in the desert of Saudi Arabia, lived in Jerusalem, became boys with the leader of the Ibn Saud clan that would eventually become the founders of Saudi Arabia, and eventually started to just do espionage for them, trying to figure out who these opposing political groups were funded by Europe and the Middle East at the time. And also just wrote maybe the greatest book of all time, and maybe actually definitely my favorite book. If you've met me in the last 6 months, you've probably heard me talk about this. But this guy is Mohammed Essed, wrote Road to Mecca, The Road to Mecca. And changed my life.
All these people conducting the seance were bringing in these 9 maybe extraterrestrial beings, maybe beings that go to the 9 Egyptian gods, but it's like a council.
He really was a genuine believer.
I'm Andrea Puharich. I'm a physician by training, research scientist by choice.
We have tape recordings of him meditating in the king's chamber.
What?
And they brought through this information. Apparently they're channeling this Egyptian god.
And there are specifically 9 Egyptian gods.
So he gets this call from metallic voice. That was some sort of, alien intelligence. This is what, you hear a lot about this with the UFO abduction stuff. Like these people weren't looking to be in the spotlight. It took about 2 years for me to basically earn the trust of these space kids. It's like Stranger Things in real life.
One neat solution that would explain everything away would be mind control, right?
Delgado implanted radio receivers in the heads of bulls.
Delgado has remote control of the animal.
You have a guy who's being able to play the bull like a video game.
I'm revealing for the first time a lot of things that even my closest working colleagues do not know.
There's reasons to believe Puharich may have been a double agent. He says it.
Really?
On tape.
This is one of the craziest interviews I've ever done, man.
I think they try to contact demons. The government know about demons.
The British royal family has been flatlie royal since 1840. Explain that. Flatlie royal means illegitimate, not allowed on the throne. So, from the Battle of Waterloo, the British royal family lost all their money and they've been funded by the Rothschilds in exchange for breeding rights. So the Rothschilds had the breeding rights to the British royal family from 1819 to 2019.
So what was the purpose of the Rothschilds needing this?
The British royal family were virtually bankrupt from 1815. So the Rothschilds funded the British royal family in exchange for the Rothschilds breeding the royals. So the whole British royal family are Rothschild Batards. And Batard is the royal name for bastard. So what I did in my legal documents is I exposed King George V of England as being sired by Tsar Alexander III of Russia, and I exposed Queen Elizabeth II as sired by artificial insemination by Winston Churchill, who was actually the illegitimate son of King Edward VII.
And did you believe in God?
Oh, yes.
Do you now believe in God? Now? Difficult to answer. I know. I don't need to believe. I know.
Wow. It's not difficult to answer, it's difficult to explain.
If you think Freemasons are good, watch this.
I'm trying to concentrate, but Mr. O'Neill's ring, that's a ring of my profession. You don't know nothing about that. Okay, can we get a close-up on that area? What?
My grandfather, ladies and gentlemen, I love him, I miss him, he's a great man. But my grandfather was a Freemason. Because of my loyalty, it's tempting to water down the fact that Freemasonry is witchcraft. But Travis, my grandfather's a good man. My DP is a good man. Being good and being free ain't the same thing. And the higher you go in degrees, the darker the rituals become. Ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about blood. We're talking about skulls. We're talking about satanic rituals. This information wasn't given to me by YouTube. This information was given to me because I had the privilege of praying for a 32nd degree Freemason. I had the privilege of using praying oil to remove his Mason ring. I had the privilege of helping him renounce the pledges he made. Every fraternity had founders within them that were Freemason, high-ranking Freemason. It is unwise for you to think they were involved in witchcraft and did not bring that influence into that organization.
Fraternities are full of stuff and practices that are super demonic. And let me tell you this. You want to know one of the biggest founders of religion that was a 33-degree Freemason? Was Joseph Smith, the Mormon. You know what's I find funny about the world is they discount stuff because they have no revelation or understanding in what's going on in the world. Yeah, if you're like a second or third degree Freemason, you don't see any of the stuff that's super demonic. But like he said, he got the privilege of leading a 30-second Freemason to the Lord and changing their lives. And you know there's demonic stuff. You know there's witchcraft. You know there's rituals. There's stuff going on. You might not know it from the skim of the low level, but the higher you go, the more stuff you got to do. And so, listen, if you know anyone that's a Freemason or you're a Freemason yourself, repent, turn away from it. You can't serve two gods. You can only serve one God, and that God, his name is Jesus. So surrender your life to Jesus today. Repent of your sins. He's willing to forgive you, or go to hell over practicing witchcraft and living in it. Choice is yours. Love you. Subscribe or follow for more.
Walt Disney was a 33rd degree.
The most powerful institution on earth just told you what's about to happen, and everyone missed it.
It has sovereign immunity.
What does that mean?
It's above the law.
It's its own country.
If you look at the group of people who meet through the BIS.
What's that?
The BIS is the Bank of International Settlements, and it's the central bank of central banks.
Where is that located?
It's in Basel, Switzerland. It has 63 of the most powerful central banks as its members, and the New York Fed and the Fed are both shareholders.
Here's what they're doing.
Trillions of dollars of money flow through the banking system across borders every day. These cross-border payments are the engine for global trade and commerce. But cross-border payments today are slow, costly, and opaque.
Technical backbone of the financial system is decades out of date, many, many years out of date.
So by implementing the corresponding banking model on a programmable platform,
we have one common blockchain.
We can increase efficiency, lower costs, and reduce risk associated with cross-border wholesale payments.
They're planning on trading all stocks and bonds using tokens. What it means is this is going to be...
Large-scale public-private collaboration is essential to unlock the potential of tokenization.
You know, potentially $100, $200, $300 trillion market.
And that's good for the global economy. We can unlock trillions of dollars kind of trapped capital.
Project Agora succeeded in aligning diverse institutions around a common settlement platform.
XRP, baby. XRP has been chosen a long time ago.
Movies that actually broke the law. Part 3. The government tried to erase this documentary from existence. In the spring of 1966, Frederick Wiseman spent 29 days inside Bridgewater State Hospital for the criminally insane, documenting the horrifying conditions and treatment of its patients. This footage became the documentary Titicut Follies, which features no interviews, no narrations, no reenactments, and no music, nothing but the pure observations of a camera looking straight into man-made hell. Patients spending most of their days locked inside an empty cell without clothes. The loneliest moments coming while they're allowed outside with others. The cruelest moments coming while in the hands of their doctors. The strangest moments coming when you can't differentiate between guards and inmates as they all share the stage for the hospital's annual variety show put on by the head of the asylum, a thespian stuck in a superintendent suit. I was surprised to learn that when Wiseman screened the movie for the superintendent, he actually liked it and hopes the documentary would expose how awful conditions were and pressure the state into funding improvements. The superintendent even helped the filmmaker move through all the legal red tape to film there in the first place, which took about a year and a half. But the state of Massachusetts wasn't as pleased with Titicut Follies. They cared less about the conditions inside the hospital and more about the movie embarrassing them. Under the excuse of patient privacy, the court banned the movie and ordered all film negatives to be destroyed. For over 20 years, Wiseman's documentary was illegal to watch unless you were a healthcare professional, a lawyer, judge, or a student in one of those fields. And even then, the screenings had to be approved with advance notice to the Attorney General's office, rendering the movie basically impossible to view. Wiseman reopened the case in 1987 after 5 men died at Bridgewater due to negligence, and it'd take another 3 years for the courts to reverse their stance, which they did only after the judge on the original case passed away. The new judge decided that the film was protected by the First Amendment, and it aired for the first time to the American public on PBS 23 years later in 1992. But behind closed doors, do we take any better care of those in correctional facilities now compared to in 1967? There's one modern companion piece called The Alabama Solution, which was released in 2025, and it was created from videos taken by inmates inside Alabama prisons with contraband cell phones. This footage could be considered illegally captured too, and definitely hard to watch, but I think you should see both of these documentaries.
The Maltese cross and the swastika, they are the most important symbols
symbols in the world. It's all around you all of the time. You might know the Knights of Malta or the Crusades. The Crusades had a particular cross, and actually it's Crusader cross or the Maltese cross. According to the British Museum, that is the symbol of God-controlled power, and that's a representation of the swastika. If you go to the Berlin Museum, you can see a bowl. In the center of that bowl is a swastika from the Sumerian culture. If you go to any Buddhist temple in the world, the walls are covered with swastikas and salvastikas as the fabric of space-time. But if you go to any Hinduism, I lived in India for 8.5 years. I was regularly going to and from work behind trucks. They have a salvastika and swastika. You need the pair because one is male, one is female. The swastika is male, the salvastika is the female. If you go and look at a map of Japan, and it has, I think, salvastikas to mark the temples in Japan. It's all around you all of the time in every which way that nature works.
This man explains how the royal family are all bastards. Have a listen.
The British royal family has been flat-lie royal since 1840.
Explain that.
Flat-lie royal means illegitimate, not allowed on the throne. So, from the Battle of Waterloo, the British royal family lost all their money and they've been funded by the Rothschilds in exchange for breeding rights. So the Rothschilds had the breeding rights to the British royal family from 1819 to 2019.
So what was the purpose of the Rothschilds needing this?
The British royal family were virtually bankrupt from 1815. So the Rothschilds funded the British royal family in exchange for the Rothschilds breeding the royals. So the whole British royal family are Rothschild Batards. And Batard is the royal name for bastard. So what I did in my legal documents is I exposed King George V of England as being sired by Tsar Alexander III of Russia, and I exposed Queen Elizabeth II as sired by artificial insemination by Winston Churchill, who was actually the illegitimate son of King Edward VII.
Hang on.
I know, it gets too much, so I'll show you a chart.
Okay, so you've got it all laid out for us to see?
Absolutely.
Greg has produced a chart showing a surprisingly different narrative of the royal lineage we've all become accustomed to.
The royals in Europe have the same roots. All right, folks. Thank you for staying till the end. I hope you liked my lineup. Don't forget to subscribe, likes, and hype it. All right? And so you won't miss my next video. Have an awesome day, and always, God bless.